Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I had some requests for a process video of my collage process, which is awesome. Would love to share with you guys. I don't really know the nice way to say that. I don't really have much of a process other than just tearing and pasting down. And it really is, in my opinion, other than actual therapy, it is like the best version of therapy that I have had access to in the past. But I pulled out some scraps and some papers that I had painted. I've pre-painted some pages in my journal, and I picked this page. I know for certain I want to use this guy. I painted these characters when I first got my gouache paint, and I really like them. They kind of give me the energy of the Fool card in the tarot. They also just kind of remind me of me. I feel out of place more often than I care to say. And I just kind of feel like I'm this little person who doesn't really understand how the world works and what my place in it is supposed to be. It's actually part of why I started studying spirituality as intensely, that and hyper-focus. I've been very hyper-focused on spirituality since about 2019 when I was on bed rest with my daughter. I really like so like kind of what I go for. I like the aesthetic of like this being like okay, this is gonna sound kind of weird, but like if this page is reality, then this is like a tear in reality, and I kind of like build images and symbols and colors into the collage that are of significance to me in a given period of time. I guess that is as close to my process as I can really get. And it's just kind of like seeing what I want to go in a certain place and just putting it down. And you know what? Sometimes I hate it. Other times I love it. Sometimes I hate it and then it grows on me. The piece that I posted on my Instagram page yesterday, the collage piece, actually was a piece that I was not crazy about at first. And it kind of grew on me once I saw, like, once I edited the photo and kind of like saw how the texture was highlighted. That's when I really saw the beauty in it. But, you know, being creative is just about going with the flow and doing something that feels good. And sometimes this is with my mental health and just being tired from life in general, this is all I have the capacity to do. And that's one of the reasons why it is so great to have some papers pre-made. I also buy ephemera packs from different shops. I know on this channel specifically, I've mentioned Megan and the Moon's shop, which is fabulous. And if you search on Etsy specifically, you can find all sorts. I also pick up vintage books or things like that. And then you can like stamp them. Like I have a spiral stamp, and I stamped some old music paper, sheet music paper that I had gotten. And you just want to build layers, and you want it to be fun. And if there's a piece, like I really like this yellow tree, so I kind of want to have that in a spot where it's going to peek out a little bit. That's kind of like, eyes are very important to me, so I have this guy here pretty front and center. But I also try not to get too attached to any one image, because when you make something and it's like when you make something, even though you want like one specific piece of it to show, sometimes the total image, the total absolute finished product is going to mean a bit more than it would as that one image standing alone. So I try not to tie myself down. This, I think it's called an ampersand. And I rip a lot because number one, I'm lazy, and number two, I don't enjoy cutting things because I never cut straight and it bothers me. And because this is kind of like my art journal and it gets really messy, I don't mind if my little guy here is gonna be hanging off a little bit. I don't really know a good place for him yet, so I am gonna wait on that. You know, I may not end up using him at all. It really just depends. I'm kind of digging this smiley face, although I do think that he needs some details added. I got these paint markers from Target. Usually my go-to rule is that I will buy kind of a less expensive version of an art supply before I commit to buying like the fancy version of it. But this is their Mondo Llama brand. I'm assuming I'm saying that correctly, but I don't really know. Anyways, they actually turned out to be pretty good. Not the best. I do have some Posca markers, but I keep them at my other desk. I have like 4 desks. And I still use these quite a bit. And that's okay. They don't always work the best, but like I said, it's kind of about not having any rules and not tying yourself down to one aesthetic, one way of showing up on the page. It's literally like a new version of yourself coming out every single time that you are here doing something creative. Part of the papers that I made the other night was using these like neon watercolor paints that I have. And I definitely have been enjoying these really bold colors lately. So I want to work this in. And one thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to shout out Megan and the Moon's new Instagram account where they're doing the 365-day art prompts. If you're feeling like you want to journal, but like following, just doing something, just sitting down at the page and just, you know, gluing stuff down or making papers, if that seems too overwhelming to you in the beginning, I highly recommend it. They have some great tutorials and it really mixes it up, and there's so much to choose from. It's not a challenge. It's not anything specific. It's just, you know, trying to have more creativity in your everyday life. And it's a wonderful idea, and the prompts are wonderful. I highly recommend, especially for people who are trying to build a daily or as often as you can creative practice. So one of the things I do when I got some new watercolor pencils, so that's why you're seeing so many patterns on the actual pages. But one of the things that I also like to do that gives a really good layered look is like when you're making papers for collaging, you want to mix it up, right? So like I was just making pages with watercolors, my watercolor pencils, my watercolors, and I think I used a little gouache, but using different marks, using different colors, you know, kind of doing like a hodgepodge of different techniques and things so that when you come to the time where it is you're getting ready to collage and you're trying to like pick some pieces to put down, you have a lot of like mixture, and you'd be surprised. I always worry that I'm gonna run out of different things, different marks to make. And I somehow seem to always find something to show up. I really like this. It's got some glittery paint here. I also really enjoy X's. That is a mark that I use quite a bit. So you can see now that we're getting some really good layers going. I have decided I am going to use this smiley face guy. I really think that that is the direction that I want to go in. As I said before, I try not to get too attached to like the idea of covering something completely, because if I get anxious about that, then kind of defeats the whole purpose in my view. So I'm thinking something like that, but I don't quite know. I use this tape runner because it's faster. I don't always enjoy using glue because it's messy and it kind of feels yucky to me sometimes, like sensory wise, and I just, especially if I'm having a day where I need the satisfaction of a good collage, I try to do it in a way that feels good. And this is what works for me. It could be totally different for you, and that's fine. Rainbows, over the past couple years, rainbows have been really powerful for me. I used to be into really bright colors when I was a kid. And at some point I kind of started limiting that just because, you know, growing up, that wasn't really what was considered cool, to have these bold, bright colors. You know, like once you got past the 90s. When I was in junior high, which is when I really started caring about that stuff, at least not where I grew up, that wasn't like what was considered cool. But, now I'm just kind of trying to see what else I can fit in here. You know, okay, so I made these paintings in this mixed media notebook, this mini one. And what I do is I normally just paint and move on, even though it'll end up bleeding onto another page. And it leaves me with the back of a paper that has like that on it. I could not have replicated that. You know, randomness. If you are into divination at all, you can also do that and look for symbols within it. Like I kind of see a face right here looking back at me with all of the colors bleeding into it, which I think is really interesting. If you guys want any type of content about like looking for symbols in everyday things, just let me know. And now we're just gonna add little pieces. I've got this from like ripping it out of the notebook, but I still kind of like how that looks. I really like this, just that simple line. I like using color and then mixing like the stark like black and white with it a lot. It kind of just gives it a little extra something. But see, so I made this dot page here, which I wasn't crazy about at the time, and I'll use some of it, but look at how that turned out on the back from the other page that was pressed up against it as it was drying. I mean, probably not the most, I don't know, the best way to go through. It's really just because I'm impatient is what it comes down to. Sorry if the camera is shaking, I accidentally hit the base. And put that right there. And I feel like I want kind of one more piece to kind of like, I don't want to say shock, but like something that will go against the backdrop of all of this color. You know, sometimes I include words on these. I've not been big on the words recently. I've been including more words with my drawings instead. A lot of the time I try to write that myself when I am doing it. You know, or I'll quote like a book that I'm reading or something like that, but you can really do whatever you want. You can do found words, like if you cut out words from a magazine and kind of like piece things together. I know they have sticker collections like that. So I'm really enjoying the way that this has turned out, and I think it's time for some marks. One of my themes for the past, another theme for the past couple years is like taking my power back. I'm definitely a people pleaser. So one of the things I do is I include a little crown, and it, you know, I draw it this way on purpose because I want it, you know, we have a messy look going on here. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be anything. It can look however you want it to. And I'll find myself reaching for a lot of the same colors. But what's beautiful about, like, you know, one day I will sit down and I will prep a bunch of pages with watercolors. Another day I will sit down and I will prep some collage pages. Another day I will sit down and rip out pages from a magazine, so that by the time I'm ready to sit down for a collage, I've done all of these processes over several different days. And each process in and of itself is kind of healing. And then I also have the healing journey of piecing things together. And even though the same marks or the same colors will show up, it still always ends up looking kind of unique and different. And no two pieces end up the same. And that's kind of why I like this messy, fun approach. I think that, and you know what, you can have your pieces show up the same. As I said, there are no rules. You can do literally whatever you want. I guess the only piece of advice I say is to really follow your intuition. One of the things that I think we're meant to be here to do, to experience while we're here in our life, is to create. And different people do this in different ways. But I think that it is like one of the more powerful experiences that you can have. And I spent so much of my life, you know, I was addicted. I was a problem drinker for a long time. I'm an recovering alcoholic. And, you know, I gave into a lot of self-sabotage and a lot of negative self-talk. So I don't want anybody, if I can help even just one person avoid that, then I will feel satisfied in what I am trying to do. And that is one of the reasons, like when I launched my Patreon over the weekend, which check out that link in the description if you feel called to. When I launched my Patreon, I wanted to make sure that I was still offering free content and connecting with you guys in a free way, because I don't want to like limit myself. I want to share this because I do think that it is like one of the more accessible ways that we can help ourselves. Because, you know, therapy isn't accessible for everybody, and art isn't going to solve all of our problems, but it can solve some of them, and it can make us feel better in the process. And that's, I guess, what I have to say about that. All right, so I think I'm pretty satisfied now with how this has turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed the process and me talking about pretty much everything as I went through it. stay tuned for another video, hopefully in a few days, and take care of yourselves this week. Okay, bye.